Thanks for streaming with us on WUSA 9 Plus. I'm Simone De Alba. We are counting down to Election Day. WUSA 9 is your home for all things elections in D.C., Maryland, and Virginia. There's a lot of important races here in our area, which is why we've been sitting down with candidates for wide-ranging interviews on the issues. Right now, we're going to focus on the race for Virginia's 7th Congressional District. Republican Derrick Anderson is up against Democrat Eugene Vindman. Both were invited to our studios. We'll be bringing you their interviews back-to-back in the order in which those interviews were conducted. First up, Derrick Anderson. Today we're joined by Mr. Anderson. He's the Republican candidate. He's from Spotsylvania County. He served in the U.S. Army, including as a Special Forces Green Beret, and he holds a law degree from Georgetown University Law Center. It is so good to have you here in studio.
Thank you, ma'am. It's a pleasure.
Yeah, I know things are busy right now. I wanted to jump right in with you.
Sure.
If you win, what will be your first priority to tackle in Congress?
Yeah, so the biggest thing we've got to get under control is the economy, right? I'll tell you a quick story, Simone. So I got a letter in the mail a few months ago from a 10-year-old by the name of Ella. And in Ella's letter, she had one line in there that really stood out to me, and it said, "Derrick, can you fix the government so my mom can buy snacks again?" I mean, this is a 10-year-old that sees how it's impacting her family.
Sure.
I went and spoke to her parents afterwards. They left their address on there, so I showed up to their house to say hi to them and gave her some buttons and stuff, and now she's one of our biggest fans. Ella, hi out there if you're listening or watching. But look, I talked to John and Shannon, her parents, and they were like, look, we can get food on the table, we can get our kids to soccer practice, but we can't get things saved for, like the retirement, their kids' education. So if we look at some of the things that are going on here in the Commonwealth of Virginia, about a third of Virginians right now, about 35%, are living paycheck to paycheck. Right. A quarter of Virginians are delinquent on their credit cards. Why? Because they're buying gas and groceries on their credit cards instead of the large items that they used to. And then we see about the average family in the Commonwealth of Virginia is spending about $1,100 more a month just to live. So we got to get this economy back on track, and there's a few things that we can do to do that. One, we got to balance the budget, right? We're what, 40 billion or $1 trillion in debt right now. We got to start balancing the budget. And if you go up to Washington, D.C. and you say you're supposed to do a job, do the job. So if you don't, you shouldn't get paid if you're not balancing the budget up there. Secondly, we need to make sure we get taxes low so that people can have the money in their pockets. And then third, we also need to make sure we stop the overspending. And lastly, the number one thing we can do, and I think this gets to the crux of your point, Simone, is we got to get U.S. energy back up and running. That's the number one issue. I'm talking to small businesses and across the district, is that the cost of energy is just too high right now. So I'd encourage folks to think with their pocketbooks, think with their wallets when they go to vote this election cycle.
Well, it's funny, when you bring up Ella, it's such an innocent illustration, right, of the fact that this economy is impacting families on every single level. And when you talk about things like balancing the budget, lowering taxes, these are things that all have to be done in a bipartisan capacity. Yeah. So how do you do that, especially when things are so polarized right now?
Yeah, look, so I was a Green Beret in the Army, right? So when we were on missions in Afghanistan and Iraq, we didn't wear a blue or red jersey. We all wore the United States Army's jersey, which sometimes could be green, sometimes all different colors. But look, we got to get things done. That's the kind of person I am. I'm a mission-oriented person. I want to get things accomplished. I'm willing to work with both sides of the aisle to make sure I'm very open with this, that both parties have been bad with spending, right? Sure. They continue to spend. So we got to come back to just normalcy, common sense solutions, and common sense problems. One of the interesting things about me, you mentioned it in the top of it, I'm from Spotsylvania County. My mom lives there, my family lives there, my cousins, the chairman of the Board of Supervisors in Spotsylvania County, we went to middle school together. So when I go up to Washington, D.C., I don't have the opportunity to do something silly. My family and friends are going to hold me accountable, and I think that's really what it comes down to nowadays, is just having a sense of accountability. When we send people up to Washington, D.C., make sure they're doing well by taxpayer dollars.
Sure. In your public appearances, you talk about cutting wasteful government spending and, as you just touched on, balancing the budget, right? Are there any specific programs or agencies you feel maybe need trimming or cutting altogether that you would be transparent about?
Sure. So one of the first things we have to look at is Kamala Harris and Joe Biden in the beginning of their administration. They spent $7 trillion off the bat, right? We look at, right now we're in $35-ish trillion in debt, and they spent $7 trillion right off the bat. Look, if we have to spend money to do things like make sure our infrastructure is set up in I-95, we need to make sure that money is going to infrastructure. One of the things that was in that package was about 32 or $42 billion for broadband internet. You know how much broadband internet we've gotten in the 7th Congressional District or in the Commonwealth? Zero. because it's tied up in the regulatory process. So, when we talk about if we're going to spend our money, let's make sure we're spending our money on things that are going to actually impact people. Another example, and this has been brought up recently, but it was also something that was a study that came out recently that talked about government buildings, right? So what we saw is there was a study that came out and said the Social Security Administration is only using 13% of their government building space, right? So if you look at it, people are working from home. That's fine. If that works for that government agency and people are getting their job done, that's absolutely fine. But what we shouldn't be doing is paying the lease or the mortgage on 87% of a building that we're not using. Again, these are just like common sense things to make sure we can cut the spending where we need to, so that we're not overtaxing the people in the 7th District and throughout the Commonwealth of Virginia.
Let's talk about where you stand on Project 2025. So help our viewers understand what parts you agree with and what parts you disagree with.
Yeah, so admittedly, Simone, I haven't read it. My opponent, he talks about it quite often. I think it's interesting that my opponent is basing his entire campaign off of that. I haven't read it. I haven't, as we talked about beforehand, we're 13 days before an election. I'm talking to voters. I was at 2 early voting locations today, talking to voters about the issues that are actually impacting them. What I find interesting about this is that my opponent lies about this and saying that I support this when he's the one that brought a binder up during one of our forums and read from it the entire time. What I can tell you is that folks in our district are talking about the economy, they're talking about the border, and when my opponent lies about something like this, he's distracting from the issues because he's on the wrong side of the issues when it comes to the economy and the border. He's also lied about his military record. He said that he's lied about his rank in the military. He's lied about his time overseas, saying that he used weapons of war in combat when he knows very well he didn't. And look, I'm a former Green Beret. I know what it feels like to have those bullets whiz by your head. I lost 5 of my guys in Afghanistan. So if he's willing to lie about that, what else is he willing to lie about? And I don't think he's had one trustful or honest campaign ad against me, to be quite honest. So when I'm talking to folks on the ground, what they're talking about is their pocketbooks and how much it's costing to live.
Let's go ahead and bring up one of those campaign ads, because this is, political season. Things are getting a little bit messy here.
Sure.
I did want to bring up one specifically. The New York Times reported that you used your friend's family in a photo op used in your campaign. The image has been used by your opponent widely in political ads. I wanted to see, can we pop that up? Do we have it? Okay, it is this photo. First of all, is this your family?
No,
okay.
That was not the intent of the photo at all.
Can you tell voters
sure.
what you were thinking? What was the plan here?
So first off, it's absolutely unbelievable that this is what my opponent is focusing on 13 days before an election. Look, it's B-roll footage. Every campaign in the nation, including my opponent, takes pictures and videos with people throughout the district, veterans, business owners, what have you. The woman in there is actually a good friend of mine. I serve with her husband in the National Guard. They took a screenshot of a video of us hanging out. I never used it in any sort of campaign ad. I never used it in any of my material. But what I find interesting about this is that's what my opponent is focused on. I'm focused on the things in the district that are actually affecting people, and this is what my opponent's talking about. And let me just be clear too, Simone. These are people in our district. This is a family within our district, and he's dragging them through the mud right now, which is absolutely horrendous. So again, another lie. He's lied about that. He's lied about, again, you don't find one trustful or honest ad that he puts out there, which is absolutely horrendous.
Let's talk about abortion rights. This is a really big topic for people this election. Do you support federal action, federal legislation, and in what form?
So my mom had me at a very young age. She was 18 years old when she had me. She had my brother 13 months later. My grandmother had her at 18. My great-grandmother had her at 18. I'm glad my mom had me, and my mom's glad that she had me. Obviously, she's had her times with me, but look, the Dobbs decision gave this to the states to make decisions for each state, and Virginia's spoken on this issue. Look, my opponent, again, lies about this issue. I've been very open about where I stand on this, and I've said that I do not support a national ban. I've said that I support IVF, and I have a very close family member that's trying to have a child right now, and I want to make sure that we have the resources for them to have, so I can have a little nephew. And I support over-the-counter contraceptives. But again, my opponent, he lies about that. He continues to lie about his military rank. He's lied about every single thing you can think of. And again, why does he lie about these things? Well, because he cares about himself. He doesn't care about the people in the district.
Let's talk about gun violence. What would you like to see happen to decrease gun violence specifically, especially among our young people and in schools?
So we need to look at what the underlying factors are here. Look, let's talk about, there's been some school shootings that have happened recently. There's been assassination attempts on individuals. Look, what we're finding out is the FBI knew about these individuals well beforehand, and in fact, we found out that they had mental health issues. Look, again, I've come back from overseas. I've had friends, I've had service members that have unfortunately paid that ultimate sacrifice and taken their lives. We have to start getting the mental health aspect under control. What I can tell you is that my opponent and his party have voted against legislation that would give funding for mental health, both in the VA and in the civilian capacity. They voted against legislation that would enhance the penalty for individuals who committed crime with a weapon. So for instance, armed robbery versus normal robbery, it's the same. They voted against the legislation, which is a deterrence factor. And then they also voted against, we've heard about them in their defund the police movement. Look, they wanted to take SROs out of school. The school resource officers, I remember mine, I don't remember his name, but I remember him. Everyone loved him, right? It's a great recruiting tool for our law enforcement. I spend a lot of time with our law enforcement throughout the 7th Congressional District, and they're struggling with numbers right now. So this is we can't take SROs out of school, and we need to make sure that we're funding mental health so that people are taken care of.
Okay, SROs aside, do you support arming teachers?
I think we need to focus first on making sure that we get the underlying issue under control with mental health before we start going that route. What we're seeing right now is that quite often my opponent and his party, they want to go after law-abiding citizens and their weapons when we need to be going after the criminals and people that have serious mental health issues. So I think that's the first step to getting this under control.
So maybe you might support.
I'm saying that we need to make sure we're getting funding for mental health and making sure that we're enhancing the penalties for people who commit crimes with weapons.
Let's talk about term limits for Supreme Court justices. Is this something that you support?
I find it interesting that this is one of the questions that people are talking about quite often. Look, I'm a constitutional guy. The Constitution allows for the Supreme Court. To have term limits in there would be a very, very interesting concept, considering that the Constitution allows for them to have life tenure. Federal Article III judges get life tenure, so essentially we'd be asking to change the Constitution. So look, I think that how it is in place right now is the place that it's been. I find it interesting that my opponent and his party quite often jump up and down on this issue when they don't have people in the Supreme Court that they want. But I have faith in the Supreme Court. I have faith in our judicial system. I'm an attorney. I've worked for 2 federal judges. I'm very happy with those individuals and the work that I did with them. But doing that would have to change the Constitution.
All right, some of our voters are concerned that the health, so to speak, of our Social Security and Medicare programs could be in jeopardy. What do you propose to preserve these? Yeah,
so we need to get, I was just at a retirement home yesterday, and that was the first question that came out, Simone. So look, we got to make sure we are preserving Social Security for those individuals that are over 55. Absolutely. We need to make sure pre-existing conditions are taken care of. We need to make sure that they have the funding, because look, I have grandparents. My grandmother still works, but I don't know if she'll ever stop working, but that's grandma, right? But we need to preserve those for those individuals. But I think what we need to do is, because we see it's a broken system right now, is we need to come back together. But again, you mentioned this in the beginning with bipartisanship. We saw Ronald Reagan and Tip O'Neill come together on this and actually come up with a plan. And I'd absolutely be open to the idea of coming up with a plan to try to preserve it and make sure that we're taking care of our retired community.
What about, specifically drug prices? We hear a lot of people say, hey, my prescriptions are crushing me. They're so expensive. Anything that you would add here in this regard?
Yeah, I mean, when we look at the competition, right? When we look at some of the healthcare that has been going on throughout the last few years, we've seen some companies that kind of monopolize the area. We need to allow for open competition, right? I think allowing for health insurance to go over state lines would decrease as well. So again, open competition, allowing drug companies, generic drug companies to compete is a good idea to allow for those drug costs to come down overall. And I get my health care from the VA, so I know at least how the VA runs their system as well.
We're getting tight on time, but I wanted to ask you about the border and immigration, of course.
Sure.
What would you like to see done on this, and what can you do in a bipartisan sense if you're elected?
Sure. So I did have the opportunity to go down to the border. I had to remind my opponent that President Obama built border wall. President Trump built border wall. The issue with immigration and what we're seeing here in the 7th Congressional District is it's affecting us in Virginia. We have 5 people a day overdosing on fentanyl. We have 2 individuals that were illegal immigrants of Jordanian descent attempt to breach the front gate of Marine Corps Base Quantico. we asked questions. Who are these people? Who are they affiliated with? And we didn't hear anything except for the fact that those 2 individuals were released on bail. So the border crisis is impacting us in Virginia, absolutely. And so we have to go back to common sense solutions. And you've even heard the Democrats talk about this quite often. Build the wall, end catch and release, reinstate the Remain in Mexico policy, and make sure we fund our ICE and DHS agents. My opponent, he took his immigration policy off of his website. That's how much he cares about this issue. And it's concerning to me, especially with the local law enforcement. Again, I mentioned that I speak a lot with our sheriffs and our chiefs of police throughout the district. And every single one of them, almost every single one of them, say that the fentanyl issue, it expends so much resources from our local law enforcement. So we got to clean it up. We got to get back to normal policies that I think everyone would agree with to make sure we don't have millions upon millions of people coming here illegally.
This is a tight race. As I've mentioned, the polling has just been neck and neck all the way through August. What would you say to undecided voters, who are watching today? Any last minute words to them?
Yeah, look, there's a stark difference between me and my opponent in this race. My opponent is focused on his past. He's focused on his revenge toward President Trump and doubling down on Kamala Harris and Joe Biden's failed policies that got us into the mess that we're in right now, where I'm focused on the future. I'm trying to look at things to see how we can make our economy work for folks and make it more affordable for people to live. I want to make sure our border is secure. So that we take this fentanyl that's poisoning our communities off the road, and I want to make sure I take care of our veterans. That's what I'm focused on in this race. Again, my opponent will lie time and time again. You see the ads out there. I would tell folks to go to our website, derrickanderson.com. We've got a lot of information that talks about the things and talks about the lies that my opponent is spreading. But again, I'm a hometown guy. I'm a guy from Spotsylvania County who was able to live the American dream. I've worked in my mom's restaurants growing up. She did promote me to a cook. Yeah. She promoted me to a cook. But I was able to go to Virginia Tech on an ROTC scholarship and be the first person in my family to graduate college before joining the Army, becoming a Green Beret, doing 6 deployments overseas, including Iraq and Afghanistan, earning a law degree, and being able to clerk for 2 federal judges. So I encourage people to go out and vote. I encourage them to please look at our website. And I hope that you all are able to support me in this campaign, not only to represent the 7th Congressional District, but to be able to be the next congressman and represent the people that raised me.
All right, Mr. Anderson, I wanted to thank you for taking the time, having the conversation with me today. We appreciate it.
Thank you so much, Simone.
That was Republican Derrick Anderson. Now to his Democrat opponent, Eugene Vindman. Today we are joined by Eugene Vindman. He calls Dale City home now, but he was born in Soviet Ukraine and immigrated to the United States as a child. He served in the U.S. Army, and after retiring, he worked for the National Security Council as a legal advisor. I did want to just welcome you to the studio. And I did want to mention, too, we did note that we offered both candidates 15 minutes, but your staff did let us know that you're under a time constraint here, so we have 7 minutes. Let's go ahead and dive right in. Let's go ahead and begin with, if you are elected, what is your first priority to tackle in Congress?
Thank you, Simone, for having me. Look, I'm a local father, husband, raising my family in Dale City. I served 25 years in the military, and when I retired, I chose to make Dale City my home. I'm among my family and friends, and we have a number of local pressing issues. Everything from improvements to infrastructure on I-95 to restoring Roe v. Wade. The Dobbs decision actually eliminated a constitutional right. So my daughter, 14-year-old, has fewer rights than her mother and women have for generations. And I will also fight against Project 2025, this manifesto for a second Trump administration that would politicize the civil servants, the hardworking civil servants that make up 15% of the district.
The economy, inflation continues to pull as the #1 issue with voters. So if you're elected, what do you propose that you can actually do to give people some relief?
Sure. As a local resident, as a husband and father, the house that I have now in Dale City, I'd frankly have a hard time affording with today's interest rates. Now, there's been progress made. Obviously, a 50 basis point cut in interest rates is a good start. But the cost of groceries is still too high, and gas prices are too high. So one of the things that we have to be acknowledge is the fact that corporations are making record profits. Corporations are making record profits at the same time that consumers are paying extremely high prices. So consumers and workers are suffering. I would fight against corporate greed. I would fight against corporate monopolies, and that's one way to control prices.
abortion rights. Do you support federal action, federal legislation, and in what form?
Yeah, absolutely. So as I mentioned, 2 years ago, before Dobbs, a little over 2 years ago, there was a constitutional right which has been removed. Somebody that served 25 years in the military, it doesn't sit well with me that my daughter has fewer rights than women have enjoyed for generations. So I would vote in favor of restoring Roe v. Wade as the law of the land. It's a fundamental health care issue, and it's a right that women deserve. I would restore Roe v. Wade, and I would block any attempt by extremists to impose a national abortion ban.
Go ahead.
Yeah, just on this point, this is a fundamental question in this race. I get it all the time, and my opponent has refused to answer where he stands on restoring Roe v. Wade and restoring women's reproductive health care.
Anderson said when he was on here he would not vote for a federal abortion ban. He supports contraceptives and IVF, just to give some more context to your statement there. I did want to ask, speaking of your opponent, he has been targeting your military rank, saying that you have embellished your title and your combat record. According to your military records, you retired at the rank of lieutenant colonel. However, you did reach the rank of colonel. You didn't serve the 3 years required to officially retire with that title. Now, your campaign has often referred to you as a retired colonel. Have you embellished or misrepresented your military title?
Look, my opponent is lying about my military service record, which I'm very proud of, just like he lied about his fake family. And somebody that's going to lie about something as fundamental as whether they're married, whether they have a family, how do you take them at their word when they talk about issues like Project 2025 and abortion? He's lying about my service record because he wants to distract from the real issues in this race, which are, again, abortion and where he stands on Project 2025. And to your point, and his response is that I think you just follow the evidence. Look at who he's been funded by. He's been funded by the most radical elements of the Republican Party. He is campaigning with people like Jim Jordan, extremists, Mr. Government Shutdown. And so when he says that, and they've made an investment in him, so when he says that he's not going to vote in favor of Project 2025 or abortion, an abortion ban, I think we just follow the evidence.
To clarify, did you retire at the rank of lieutenant colonel? Yes or no?
I am a retired colonel, and
but there's
any
a
embellishments.
there's a difference in rank there. So just help me clarify and help me understand, right? So did you retire officially at the rank of lieutenant colonel, even though you hadn't yet hit the requirement for colonel?
So Simone, again, my opponent is lying about my record, just like he lied about his fake family. I'm entitled to be called colonel, and that's all there is to it.
Okay, what about, as you touched on, you're a decorated veteran. You have a distinguished career. That's not up for debate. But to clarify again, your opponent is attacking your combat record. Did you fight in combat?
Well, my answer to that is I deployed to Iraq, a combat zone, and I'm proud of my record. I received hostile fire pay. My opponent, once again, is lying about my record, just like he lied about his fake family, to distract from the real issues in this race. What voters care about, what they care about is high prices, inflation. They care about abortion, restoring access to abortion care. And those are the important issues in this race.
So when you posted on Twitter February 10th, quote, "I'm running for Congress because democracy is on the line. I fought for our nation in combat." Yes or no, you fought for the nation in combat?
I stand by what I said, and I stand by my military service record.
Okay, let's move along. In terms of gun violence, what would you like to see happen to decrease gun violence, especially among our young people and in schools?
Sure. As a local dad raising 2 kids in Prince William in Dale City, my son actually had a school a shooting that occurred, a lockdown. So somebody brought a gun. It wasn't a school shooting as far as people getting shot at, but somebody brought a gun, it went off, and they had a lockdown. So your mind goes to where every parent's mind goes in situations like that. My daughter so far this year has had two lockdown drills. So she's learning how to survive instead of learning math, science, or reading. Over 80% of this country supports things like red flag laws, enforcing, closing the gun show loophole, safe storage requirements. These are the common sense policies that I would work with in a bipartisan manner with Democrats, Republicans, and Independents to pass in order to make sure that we keep our kids safe. My motivation comes from my family and my children and keeping them safe.
We have been seeing what a tight race this is. Polls have just been neck and neck throughout. If you're talking to an undecided voter, someone who's right on the fence here, what would you say to them?
Yeah, look, I'm a local husband and father. As the Washington Post said when they endorsed me, I'm pro-business and pro-military. I'm a moderate. So when I served in the military, I served under Democratic and Republican presidents. When we jumped out of airplanes, when I was a paratrooper, it didn't matter whether you're a Democrat, Republican, black, white, whatever part of the country, you're focused on the mission. I'm mission focused, and I will get the job done for the voters in the 7th Congressional District.
Quickly, our time constraints, but what can you say about the border and immigration?
Well, I look at it as somebody that served in national security for 25 years, as somebody that was advisor at the White House. I'm in favor of a strong border. There was a proposal this spring to have a border bill, the strongest in recent memory, and extremists on the Republican side, including those that back my opponent and the former president, who recently just endorsed him, killed that bill for purely political purposes. I'm in favor of getting the job done, working for the voters of the 7th Congressional District, in favor of a strong border, while at the same time recognizing that we're a country of immigrants, and the immigrants are the strength of this country and the lifeblood of this country, not poison in the blood of this country.
Yes or no? This is all I've got. Can you get something done in a bipartisan sense on the border if you're elected?
Yes.
Okay. Thank you again, Mr. Vindman, for your time. We appreciate it.
Thank you for having me.
Those were the candidates for Virginia's 7th Congressional District. You can find our interviews with candidates and other races around the DMV streaming here on WUSA 9+. And be sure to stream us on election night. We'll have special live coverage starting at 8 p.m. on November 5th. We'll see you then. I'm Simone De Alba. Thanks for streaming with us.